Hey kids, Mr. Atwood here. Welcome back to the Jefferson Mustangs reading series. I hope you guys have been enjoying the Junie B. Jones books so far. I know I sure have. Today though, we are switching gears and we're going to read a new title. We're reading Flat Stanley, his original adventure. This is by Jeff Brown and it's #1 in the Flat Stanley series. So if you guys like these books, there's plenty more where this one came from. I'll be reading chapter 1 for you today, and then Mrs. Pugh will be on tomorrow for chapter 2. So I guess we'll get started. This is Flat Stanley, his original adventure, and chapter 1 is called The Big Bulletin Board. Here we go. Breakfast was ready. "I will go wake the boys," Mrs. Lambchop said to her husband, George Lambchop. Just then their younger son, Arthur, called from the bedroom he shared with his brother, Stanley. "Hey, come look, hey!" Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop were both very much in favor of politeness and careful speech. "Hay is for horses, Arthur, not people," Mr. Lambchop said as they entered the bedroom. "Try to remember that." "Excuse me," Arthur said, "but look!" He pointed to Stanley's bed. Across it lay the enormous bulletin board that Mr. Lambchop had given the boys a Christmas ago, so that they could pin up pictures and messages and maps. It had fallen during the night, on top of Stanley. But Stanley was not hurt. In fact, he would still have been sleeping if he had not been woken by his brother's shout. "What's going on in here?" he called out cheerfully from beneath the enormous board. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop hurried to lift it from the bed. "Heavens," said Mrs. Lambchop. "Oh gosh," said Arthur. "Stanley is flat." "As a pancake," said Mr. Lambchop. "Darndest thing I've ever seen." "Let's all have breakfast," Mrs. Lambchop said. "Then Stanley and I will go see Dr. Dan and hear what he has to say." In his office, Dr. Dan examined Stanley all over. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Does it hurt very much?" "I feel sort of tickly for a while after I got up," Stanley Lambchop said, "but I feel fine now." "Well, that's mostly how it is with these cases," said Dr. Dan. "We'll just have to keep an eye on this young fellow," he said when he had finished the examination. "Sometimes we doctors, despite all our years of training and experience, can only marvel at how little we really know." Mrs. Lambchop said she thought Stanley's clothes would have to be altered by the tailor now, so Dr. Dan told his nurse to take Stanley's measurements. Mrs. Lambchop wrote them down. Stanley was 4 feet tall, about a foot wide, and a half an inch thick. The next chapter is chapter 2, being flat, but you guys will have to come back to see Mrs. Pugh read that one for you tomorrow. I hope you guys are all doing good. Don't forget to wash your hands, stay home if you need to, go anywhere, make sure that your parents take you. Have a great day, kids. Thanks for reading. Bye-bye.